Hi everyone, this is Andre from Localization Academy. In this video, I'm going to present you 4 different options how you can use Trello to structure and monitor your localization projects. It all comes down to how we're utilizing boards, cards, the checklists, and the labels. If you want to find out different ways how you can structure maybe even things outside of localization projects, then check out this video. All right, let's go sign up. It's free. Create your account. We'll use details from Google to create account, full name, create account. Let's set up your workspace. Let's say if you are a localization company, maybe you want to create a workspace for all your production or for all your projects. So we are going to call this production. Okay, try Trello Premium free for 30 days. I'm going to activate this right now. The reason why we're doing this is this thing. So the premium allows you to view your data in new ways like timeline. And if you've seen any of my previous videos, you know that I'm a big proponent and fan of nice Gantt charts. I think it's the best way how you can monitor your projects visually if you're a visual person. So start free trial. So I've surrendered my credit card. So the whole idea with Trello is that you create boards, which are the visual, let's say Kanban boards, where you have your cards and you move your cards through some lists, which can represent your statuses or whatever you want. So we're going to simply start by creating our first board. So board title, I'm going to call this one my projects, and let's just start with the blue. Although I think success to every Kanban board is picking the right background. The way we're going to utilize the board, the cards, and the checklist, and even the labels in this case is that we're going to have a board where we're going to put all of our projects. And in this one, we're going to use one card to represent one project. This is the most simple way how you can do these things, but I'll show you what are the limitations of this approach as soon as we create the card. So by default, you're going to have the, the typical 3 statuses: to do, doing, or in progress and done. But what we're going to do is we're going to change this to represent our workflows. So since we're tracking, let's say, all of our projects in this one board, I think this view could be good for, let's say, higher level management, where you really just need to get a quick peek of where all the projects are. And even if you're handling multiple projects, especially if they're going through, let's say, a few workflow steps, I think this could work, unless you really need that granular level of detail, which I'm showing in all of my previous tutorials, where we really want to see if, I don't know, let's say German translation was confirmed, or if the translator or reviewer, if they are available for the task, and so on. So these are very granular things, which will be slightly difficult to track here. So what was I saying? Yes, that we want to track the main statuses instead of to do, doing, and done. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that we have a new project. Then the project is in translation. Then it's undergoing review. And then we're going to do done. What we're going to do is we're going to create our first card, which is, let's say, project A. What you can do on your project A is you can set a date, which in this case would be the date for the whole project. So I'm going to check the start date because we want to see the start date and the due date so that we can display the whole duration of the project. And let's say that our project starts on 11th and it's exactly 4 weeks. So it's going to end on May 6th. Do we want a due date reminder? I don't think we want it, and we're going to save it. So now we have our date edit for the card, and you can see it here. It's displaying right on the card. So project A is going from April 11th to May 6th. The way you can utilize the current setup is that, of course, once you, I don't know, land the project A, it comes from the client, you have the request, and once you send it for translation or you start working on translation, you move it here to the translation status. And then once you finish translation, you move it to the review. And then when it's all finished and delivered, you put it to done. Okay, so this is a very simple approach of Kanban boards. I like Kanban boards. I use it for a lot of the things, but I think when it comes to the projects, especially if you need to follow certain dates, which of course is what the project management is about, then I think the Kanban board is not the best way to monitor your projects. But of course it can give you some good ideas. So let's go back to the new thing. So even if we are doing translation, we don't know what is the status of the languages. We don't even know what are the languages right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to utilize the checklists. So what you can do in Trello is you can create a checklist, and we're going to say that this is a checklist for translation. And I think within the checklist, we're going to add check boxes or items for each language. So German, French, Japanese, Korean are standard set of 4 languages. We don't need to assign people yet. The good thing that I found just now is that you can actually add the due date for each item in a checklist. So I'm going to do it. And since we're starting, maybe I should put it here so I can edit this and I can say this is 30K words. And now we're going to add due dates to our items, our checklist items or checkboxes. So due date, since it's 30K and we're starting on Monday, our due date will be 3 weeks from then, so 29th. So here we have a checklist for translation. Next, what we can do is we can create another checklist on the same card, which is project A. And I'm going to call it review. And this one is 40 hours. And we can copy the items from the existing checklist for translation. So I'm going to do that so I don't have to type it. And now I just need to modify the due dates. So the due dates for this one will be 1 week later, so May 6th. All right. And that is our very simple setup for project A, where we have translation review and one card represents one project. So now, instead of just seeing that, okay, project A is in translation, what we can do is we can tick off the individual languages as we get the translations back. Okay, and then when we have all the translations completed, so you can see that the translation checklist is fully completed, that's when, let's say, we move the card and we start working on the review. The problem here is that the path to getting, let's say, I don't know, German, French, Japanese, Korean translated takes certain steps along the way, right? As I show in the other tutorials, what we first do is we send a handoff, right? Then we want to get a confirmation about the handoff and then we get it delivered. And in some cases, let's say you want to book the reviewers ahead of the time, you send them a heads up and then you want that heads up to be confirmed. So these are the things that I don't know how in this current structure you would be tracking. One thing that you can always do is you can use comments just to give yourself some notes like you would do on a pen and paper, or maybe you could structure your checklist items even further. Let's say under translation, you would have, I don't know, German heads up send, German heads up confirmed, and so on. So then you would have a lot of checkboxes, but it's always fun to tick off things, I think. So that's one way how you can utilize this. Another thing that I'm going to show you is the labels, which is another way how you can, let's say, structure things. So in this case, since we have our project represented by the card and we have the workflow steps represented by the lists, so the stages that we move through, and we have our, let's say, subtasks for each language, the way how we can utilize the labels is to simply give some sort of like a high level signal of where the whole project is. So we can say that the green one will be called on track. The red one would be delayed. And the orange one would be, I don't know, let's say on hold. Okay, so this one will be on track. And the labels at least make it a little bit more colorful. So you can see that our project A is currently undergoing review. We can see the whole timeline for the project, and we can see the green label, which means it's on track. And then if you open it, here you can start drilling into a little bit more detail, so you can see the status for the review for each language of your project. And then if we have another, I don't know, project B, which is, let's say, undergoing translation, you can label it as, I don't know, delayed. So it's late. One final thing that I want to show you is the timeline, the new thing that we activated with the premium feature of Trello. So I'm just going to quickly say that this dummy project that we just added, let's say it started last Monday and it's due, I don't know, let's say Friday, right? So that's why it's delayed. Okay, so by default, if you don't have premium version activated, I think you would only be able to see boards. That's the standard thing, what Trello represents for me. But now that we have activated the premium, what we can do here is we can change it to a timeline view. So once you're in the timeline view, by default, the zoom level is kind of like week. If you zoom out to a month, I think it's slightly better. And here you can see the timeline for each card, right? This is very important as we go further into the other options, because you can only see the timeline for the card, because that's where you set the start date and due date. So that's the level of information that you're also going to get on the timeline. So in our case, we can only see that project B was starting on Monday 4th and it's supposed to finish on Friday 8th. And project A is starting on Monday 11th and it's supposed to be finished by May 6th. You have several options how you wanna, let's say, group these cards. You can just follow the list, which follows the workflow steps order that we defined. You can also use labels. So for example, here we see the projects that are on track and the ones that are delayed. And that's pretty much it. So I cannot even define, unless I'm missing something, I cannot even define what is displayed on the cards. Here I can always click it and go inside of it. But it would be nice, for example, if I stick to the list view to at least show the labels on these cards. I think this is pretty much a new feature and maybe it still needs some development, some extra things, but this is the timeline that we're going to get even for our future options. And speaking of that, I think we're done with option number 1. So let's get right into option number 2. For option 2, we're going to create another board. So before I do that, let me rename this one my projects number 1. We're going to create another board, which will be called my projects number 2. And the reason why I called it my projects number 2 is because in this case, we're also going to utilize the whole board to track all of our projects, but we're going to change what each card represents. Okay, that is always the most important thing. What does the card represent? So previously, one card represented one project, and in this case, one card is going to represent the main task of our project workflow. So we have translation, review, and then we have delivery. Okay, so this will be the cards represented for our projects. So because we have the card represent the workflow step, it doesn't make sense for us to do, I don't know, translation and review, right? Because then we would have the translation cards under translation, and then what would we do with them? So in this case, what we're going to do is we're just going to have to do, then in progress, and finally we're going to have done. So very simple list that we have here. And like I mentioned, each card will represent the main task, the workflow step of a project. So what that means is that we're going to simply say we have a translation, we have a review, and we have a delivery. Okay, this should be very familiar to you from the previous tutorials. Now the problem is that we don't know what kind of project this is. So you can always put it, I don't know, into the title, but what we're going to do now is we're going to utilize the labels to label these cards as this is project A. Okay, so our green one will be project A. No, I don't need to save the information. And maybe let's say the yellow one will be project B. Yep, don't need this. Now, the benefit of this approach is that now we can actually set the timeline for each task in our project workflow. So for translation, what it means is that our translation is starting on Monday 11th and it ends on Friday 29th. Okay. The same way we can set up review. So our review, first of all, we want to associate it with project A, and then we set the timeline and we say that it starts on May 2nd and ends on May 6th. And our delivery again will be associated with project A, and we're going to set this one to simply May 6th. There. Simple as that. Now, since we have the card represent the, let's say, the main task, the main workflow step of a project, we can now utilize the checklists in a more granular way. So the problem that we had in option number one is that we didn't know how to track the different sub statuses, right? So that's how we can utilize the checklist in this case. So we can have sub sent, and where are we going to put German, French, Japanese, Korean. And then I'm going to create another checklist, which will be heads up confirmed. And I'm just going to copy the items from this one. All right, then create another checklist, which will be handoff sent. Copy our items because they're the same. And then we have another checklist, which will be handoff confirmed. Copy. And that's that. And once it gets delivered, well, technically we want to also track delivery, right? Delivered. Just copy it here because we want to be granular, and only once everything is delivered, then we consider the whole thing done. So the way it works, how you go through the project in this case is that this is basically like all the main things, the main tasks that you need to do for your projects. And you start from the top. So first of all, we start with translation, right? So once you start working on a translation, let's say you move this to in progress, right? Because we're working on translation. And the way that we handle this is, let's say we have sent the handoff for translation on project A. And then when the handoff is confirmed, we're going to do this. And as we start getting deliveries, we tick it off. And once we have everything delivered, we're going to move the translation for project A to done. And at the same time, let's say once the translation is completed, we can start working on review. But let's say you can, this is where it's a little bit better, because let's say, excuse me, let's say that your, I don't know, translation is done for the Asian languages, but the European languages are not completed yet. But at the same time, you can already have review going on for the Asian languages, right? And for the European languages, you could have at least done the heads-ups. So in this case, you would just copy all the checklists from the translation into this one because we're doing the same, let's say, the sub statuses. So heads up send, heads up confirm, hand of send, hand of confirm, and delivered. I'm pretty sure there must be a way how you can, let's say, copy multiple checklists. I think maybe using the butler, which gives you some sort of automation, but that is, let's say, out of the scope of this tutorial. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly demonstrate so that I'm not just speaking like an idiot. So let's say we want to do heads up sent and heads up confirmed. All right. So what we did probably is, in this case, let's say Japanese, Korean are delivered, but I think we would have already sent heads up for everything, and technically everything would be confirmed. And then when we do end of send, we would probably only send it for the 2 Asian languages because the translation for those has been completed. Right? So just to demonstrate how it works with multiple projects is that you would have another translation. And in this case, maybe what I can do is I can do a copy of the translation so that I copy all of the checklists. So I think this is actually what I was talking about before. Maybe there's a way how you can automate it, and maybe you can just create some, I don't know, some template card that you just create a copy of, and then you just create it for each project that you need it to. So we're going to copy a card, which will be again called translation. The label we don't need to copy. We need to copy the checklists, and we are going to put it into to do position 2, create. Okay. The dates have been copied as well, but let's say that this is project B. Okay. And all of the checklists, actually, that's a pretty good thing. The way that they copied the checklist is everything is unchecked. So I'm going to actually copy this one again. I'm going to use it for review. And this time I can leave the labels as they are. So this will be our review. And then finally, let's do the delivery for our project B. And I'm slightly going to adjust the dates. So let's say for this one, the translation started this week and it goes, I don't know, for 2 weeks. All right. And review starts on April 18, and let's get it for 1 week. So April 22. So we deliver on April 22. Correct. So when you have multiple projects going on, if you really want to just zoom into one project and you don't want to, I don't know, look at the color coding, you can utilize the filters. So here you can just filter project A or project B. Now finally, let's have a look at the timeline, how it looks like now. So let me zoom out to the month. And this is where you can see things. So the problem here is that it doesn't show our labels, which is what I was telling you about before. So one way how you could technically handle this is that you would actually put your project name at the start. So that way you can see the projects here. Or let's try the labels. So here we have our labels. And this, I think, is slightly better. So you can see our project A, which has the translation going from this to this, review from here to here, and then we deliver. And then we have project B, translation, review, and delivery. So I think it's starting to look slightly better. The thing that we don't see right now is we don't see, let's say, the translation timeline for German, French, Japanese, and Korean. Which brings us to option number 3. So I'm going to create another one. And in this case, I'm going to create a board only for one project. So we're going to say project A. And the reason why we're creating a board for one project is because we're going to have a lot of cards here just for one project. So it can be overwhelming if you're managing multiple projects. And the reason why we're going to have multiple projects is because we're going still lower and lower. Okay, the first option was one card equals project. Second option was one card represents the main task or the workflow step of a project. Now in the third case, we're going even more granular, and we're going to have our card represent a subtask for a language. So what it means is that we're going to have, let's say, translation German, translation French, translation Japanese, translation Korean. And same way, we're going to have review German, review French, review Japanese, review Korean, and then we have delivery. All right. So now we don't need to set the cards in any way to associate them with a certain project because they're already part of the board, which is about project A. So now that I loaded up the tasks, let's fix the statuses, the lists. So the list will be very similar to what we did for option number 2. So this will be to do, in progress, and done. All right. So let's look at the information that we want to be tracking for each of these things. So here we have the dates, and this is what allows you to go very granular. So we can set the dates for each subtask. And of course, it would be way better if I just first set up the first card and then I just copied the things that I need. So I might do that. So we have the dates set. So the way how we can utilize the checklists is that we're going to create just one checklist right now because we know this is for translation. So what we're going to do is we're going to say let's sub sent, let's sub confirmed, end of sent, end of confirmed, and delivered. Okay, so because our card is for the, let's say the lowest level in our hierarchy, which is the German translation, there's nothing below this. So we are only tracking. So we only need one checklist, which is for the sub statuses. So that means like if we are securing the translation. Now, how are we going to utilize the labels? You can see that my tasks contain, let's say, the subtasks for each language and for each workflow step. And then we also have a delivery, which is kind of like a bigger task. So since we're mixing these two, what we can do is we can use our labels to say that, let's say, I don't know, the blue ones will be the main tasks and the yellow ones will be the subtasks. So in this case, this is a subtask and our delivery will be the main task. There's, of course, the option to utilize the labels to represent the projects, which is what we did in the second option. And that is how you can utilize one board for all of your projects. Okay, if we use the labels for our projects, we can technically load up all the subtasks and even the main tasks here in one board. And maybe that is what would work for you, because especially if you use the filters, you can get by. But if you have a lot of languages and a lot of workflow steps, so the combination of the languages and the workflow steps would give you a lot of cards. So that's why I think maybe it's simpler to use one board per project. But of course, if you use the filters, it can work. Of course, let me just say one thing here is that everything that we do here is really, really manual. So I don't think that Trello is the best way. I think all of the other platforms that we tried before are much simpler and much more suited to what we want, and it's easier to maintain. So this is just like to give you a couple of options, maybe to think about how to use Trello for other things. Okay, so now that we have our card defined, what I should have normally done is to create the other cards as a copy so that I don't have to type it again. So translation DE, what we're going to do is we're just going to copy it to French, copy it to Japanese, and copy it to Korean. Okay, and I don't want to make the same mistake for review, so I don't know why I forgot about German. So let's do German. Let's label this as a subtask and let's set the date. So start date is May 2nd and we finish May 6th. Save. And checklists are pretty much the same that we have for everything. So the substatuses. So now that I have defined German, I'm going to get rid of these guys and I'm just going to copy it into French, into Japanese, and into Korean. There we go. Now, I'm not sure, I don't think that Trello ever had any way to order things. I'm not sure if I'm missing something, but I'm just going to order it manually. So translation first, German, French, Japanese, Korean. I think this is German, French, Japanese, Korean, and then we have done, which is behind my camera. So the way this would work is, let's say you start working on translation. So you ideally, of course, I guess, start working on translation for all the languages. And here, getting very granular is, let's say our German has been, I don't know, confirmed. French has been confirmed as well. Japanese has been, I don't know, just sent. And Korean has been also just sent. Okay, and then once we have some language delivered, you tick it off and then you move it to done. So translation for German for project A is done. And this is what actually allows you to see, or I mean set dates different for different languages. So let's say our French would be, I don't know, 2 days later. So you can set it here. And the reason why this works is because it gives us the timeline that we always wanted. So if I go here, session month, and here you can see the schedule. The only weird thing is that because we have this ordered by the list, so the things that need to do are still on the top. You cannot expect the same, waterfall, nice Gantt chart like we have in other places. I think there is probably some way how you could do this, but I don't know how to do it right now. And we're also missing the delivery date because I only set the due date. So 5/3, why is it 5/3? It should be May 6th. There we go. May 6th. If we go back to the timeline, there is our delivery. So now that I switched to the monthly view using the label, I think this is way better because it groups the things together. The only thing is that our main task is slightly away, although I think if you used, let's say, the green one for the main tasks and the yellow for the subtasks, I think you would have a nice kind of like a wrapper here for the main tasks, and then you see the subtasks below. So I think this looks pretty nice if this is the level of the information that you want. Okay, all of these different options are based on the level of information and the data that you want to see and that is important for you to manage your projects. Now for our fourth final option, which is kind of like a bonus, just to give you an idea how you can do it differently, is that what we can do is create another board which will be about our projects. And in this case, what we're going to do, instead of tracking the tasks or the projects or the subtasks, what we're going to do here is that we're going to have each card represent the language on a project. So therefore, we need to set up our lists, our main, let's say, Kanban statuses, based on the workflow steps that we have for the project. So let's say we have to do, we have translation, we have review, and we have delivered. Okay, so like I mentioned, the idea is that we have one card per language. So I'm going to add these, Korean. And now, here is the tricky part, is how are we going to use the dates? So you cannot set the date here for German. Well, technically you can set the date for the full duration, which will be pretty much the duration of the project, right? So in this case, it would be, I don't know, from 11th to 6th. But the confusing thing is that because your card, each language is going through different workflow steps, right? As it is in the TMS. It means that ideally the due date and the start date would change based on the current workflow step that the language is in. I think maybe there's a way how you can do it through automation, but that's, let's say, too much for me. So what we're going to be doing, I'm going to show you. No. So dates. So I'm going to show you. So in a while, I'm going to show you how I'm going to, let's say, create a workaround around this. The way how we're going to do this is, since this is our project, we're going to, once again, create labels for the project. So let's say this is project A. And no, I don't want to do that. And this will be also project A. This will be also project A. And Korean also project A. Okay, now how are we going to utilize the checklist is we can technically create one checklist where you're going to put all the sub statuses that we want to track. Confirmed, delivered. And the way it works is that, let's say you have a German in the translation. So I don't know, you send the handoff, it gets confirmed, it gets delivered. And when it's delivered, you move it to review. And that's when you sort of reset the checklist. So that's one way how you can do this. Or of course, you can always create checklists for each stage, which I think would be way cleaner way to do it. So here we would have one for review and with all the things. So let's go back. Let's say we're doing the translation. So we did these things, they confirm, and then they delivered. And in the meantime, we already sent the heads up for German. And it was confirmed. So then we can start working on it. We send off the handoff and it was confirmed and so on. So this is another way how you can do this. And of course, if you have another project which has, I don't know, let's say French again, what you would do is that you would set it to project B. Okay. The thing is that right now, like I told you, right now we don't have any information about the dates, because only thing we can set is that, okay, let's say our German is going from 11 until 6th, right? 4 weeks. And that is what is going to show up on our timeline. But this is not that useful because in most cases, at least based on my experience, you want to have all of the languages run pretty much in parallel and handle the whole project at the same time. So I'm going to actually get rid of the date And the way we can sort of hack this is if we want to have that information about when we are running translation, when we are running review, and when we are trying delivery, is we can add kind of like a supplementary card. And we can say that this is, I don't know, translation for our project A. And we're going to use this card to set the date from 11th until 29th. And then we're going to create another card here, which will be for review. I'll put it on the top. And again, this will be for project A. And our checklist, and our dates will be starting on the May 2nd, going all the way to May 6th. There. So now that I added these supplementary cards, what you can do on the timeline is that you can actually see them. So if I zoom out to the month, you can see the translation and review. If I change this to the labels, you can see our project A has translation running from here to here and review from here to here. So it requires a little bit of extra effort, but in this case, you set the dates for, let's say, all the languages. So at least this is kind of like really like a workaround. This is really kind of workaround for you to be able to see the tasks for your projects on the timeline, if that is what you like to have done. If that is what... So this is kind of like a workaround if you really want to have that timeline for your projects displayed. The problem is that it's kind of like the maintenance thing on this thing. So let's say if we are doing translation for German, French, Japanese, Korean, German is already in review. Let's say as we go, the other languages will also move forward into the review stage. So now our translation is done. So here is the question, what do you do with this card? You can leave it there until your whole project is done. And then once it's done, you can just archive all the cards that are related to project A, which is a good thing because you can still filter it. So that would work. Based on my few experimentation with Trello during the live stream, these are the couple of options that I thought of. The problem with Trello, no matter how much I used to love Trello, I think it's really still great, especially for the basic things with the cards, is the hierarchy of the information. So you really need to do some workarounds because it's about the way how you utilize the workspace, the boards and the cards, and maybe the checklists and the labels to structure your thing. It's not as straightforward as creating tasks and subtasks and sub-subtasks in other platforms, right? That was one of the main criteria that I was looking for, if we can easily create subtasks in the other platforms. So here you cannot create something like subcards or something like that. You can only create checklists within the cards, which of course, depending on the level of information that you need to track for your project, it can work or it cannot work. Another thing, again, like I'm pointing out in the beginning, is that unfortunately, if you really want to use the timeline and have it displayed visually, you need to get the premium thing of Trello. So yeah, that's it. Take care.